Hey friend, I'm Danielle Damrell, and I am so grateful that you're listening to the Created Worthy podcast. This show is all about honoring the life stories of women from different ages, beliefs, backgrounds, and experiences. Everyone's got a story, and instead of getting stuck in the trap of unworthiness, this is a safe place for stories to be shared. On this show, we chat about the transformative power of creative processing too, and how we can utilize our God-given creativity with intention to heal, grow, find joy, create simplicity in the midst of our chaotic lives. So pull up a seat at our table because we are all created worthy. Hello, welcome back to the Created Worthy podcast. Today, I'm joined by a very special guest and worthy warrior, Sherita Harkness. In a business world obsessed with spreadsheets and strategy decks, Sherita dares to ask a different question. What if the breakthrough you're seeking isn't hidden in the data, but in the untapped wisdom of your people? As a strategic guide and storyteller, she brings a refreshingly human perspective to business transformation, helping organizations rediscover their ability to see beyond what is to what could be. Her journey spans continents and industries, from global business and technology to creative arts and strategic consulting. But what makes Sherita truly unique isn't just her diverse experience, it's her gift for seeing the golden threads of possibility woven throughout every challenge. Through hands-on exploration and collaborative discovery, she creates brave spaces where teams can shed their disbelief and rediscover their innate wisdom. As the founder of Trading Fours, a strategic consulting firm, she helps organizations align their teams, systems, and strategy through the power of strategic play. Her unique approach combines leadership development and systems designed to create brave spaces where teams tap into their wisdom collective, solve complex challenges, and build cultures where innovation thrives. Deeply rooted in faith and fueled by authentic connection, Sherita's work demonstrates that the most powerful strategies emerge when we dare to believe before we see. She's not just helping organizations improve, she's helping them remember how to soar. Sherita, thank you so much for joining me today on the Created Worthy podcast.
Thank you for having me. I hope it doesn't disappoint.
It will not disappoint. There is no possible way Sherita can disappoint.
Let's hope not.
Let's do this thing.
Okay.
How I'd love to start is if you could just take us back to the beginning of your life. Where were you born and raised? And maybe just paint a picture of what life was like for you growing up.
I was born in Tupelo, Mississippi. I lived there for all of 3 months. We moved to Ohio. So I don't really remember that part of my life. I grew up moving around a lot. So I lived the first part of my preschool through elementary school in Ohio, moving from like Dayton to suburbs of Dayton to Cincinnati. And then we moved to Detroit, outside of Detroit, in an area called Southfield, Michigan. And then when I was in about fourth grade, we moved to Louisiana. I lived there for 6 years outside New Orleans in an area called Destrehan, Louisiana. And then we moved for a little while for the summer with my grandmother. I chose to stay with her in Montgomery for a while. And then we moved in the middle of my ninth grade year. It felt like the middle because we'd already started in New Orleans, but to Atlanta. So I grew up mostly the rest of high school through college there. I went to school at Florida State, went back to Georgia State because my dad said, "You got free money here, get back." So I did. And then ended up also going to Full Sail University. I went to LaGrange College for teaching. And so, yeah, I have been all over as a child. I have 3 brothers. I'm the oldest. So there's that. I was a tomboy for a little while. My mom had to consistently remind me that I was, in her words, "You are a girl." Because my brothers would be like, "You're such a girl." And I'm like, "No, I'm not." So I just wanted to be like the boys. But really, I just think what I loved about my brothers was that I felt sometimes like they could do things I couldn't do. They would have freedom. They could like go and just be.
Yeah.
And I think that's what my mom realized later. And just then she started encouraging me in that. My parents was very blessed. I felt as a child, I thought everybody's parents were the Huxtables. But I really feel like my parents were Cliff and Claire Huxtable. And my dad would try on Thursday nights after watching the show to reenact things that Cliff did on the show for my mom, for us. And so I was really fortunate and blessed to be able to grow up in a home where I knew I was loved. I knew what at least a picture of what love could look like. And then my grandparents on both sides of my family, my aunts, great aunts, they all were either in education, in ministry as pastors, or in some type of service that was for other people. So I grew up always being for people, always learning to care about people, wanting more good for people, and that's carried over into who I am as an adult.
I stinking love that. Also, how were you able to just sum up the whole first, what, 24 years of your life into a minute? That is so impressive to me.
So, hey, been trying to it's called keep things short so listeners want to listen. You know what I mean?
Oh my gosh. Well,
Things. Those are like big things.
yeah,
Listen.
those are huge things.
Yeah.
What caused you guys to move a lot in those early years?
My dad has an architectural degree, which I didn't find that out till later. I used to think he was an architect when I was a kid. And then I was literally on stage at a conference speaking to creatives and talking about the difference between architecting space for people and engineering space for people. And I found out just before that talk that my dad was not an architect. He went to Clemson for and received an architectural degree in engineering, but then he decided he wanted to go more into construction management. So as a construction project manager, he moved companies when they finished building a building. You got to go to the next project. So for the first couple of years of my life, he worked for a company called Blunt. I don't think it even exists anymore. But then he moved to other companies, and that's what brought us south. H.J. Russell, an amazing company in the South. A lot of people, if you're in construction or architecture, have heard of it. They've built like tons of buildings, but he was always working on airports. I think that's another reason why, as adults, like my brothers and I, we all love travel because we moved a lot, but also because my dad was just always working around global minded people. And so I think that informed a lot of our worldview and what we wanted to do. So that's why, because my mom was a nurse who argued with him about giving her job up because she taught nursing in Ohio. She had a master's, she was teaching at a master's program, one of the best teachers. And then my dad was like, "Can you stay home with our little people?" And she was like, "I did not go to school to be here with tiny people all day." Okay. But it worked out. And I'm so happy she made that sacrifice because I don't think I would be the woman I am without her having had the education, having had the background, but then making a choice to like want to be with us and support my dad in that way and support our family in that way and become a mother who works from home. Yeah. That's why.
So she did end up staying home with you guys and
She did
when you were
reluctantly. It
little.
reminded us all the time that it was Jesus who asked her to do that, and she did not. And only because she loved God did she choose to stay at home with all the little people. And then as we got older, I think her positioning shifted some. And then it just became, "Oh, I love y'all." But you got to get through diapers and
Yeah.
attitudes and teenage years before you can feel happy that you had all these children. Because she had four.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, I don't blame her. But
Well,
yeah,
we need to give her some snaps for
she did.
obedience. She gets all the snaps because that's like a incredible model of obedience and like dying
Yeah.
to yourself.
Well, I mean, they told us, I think, granted, she used to, I know everybody's not necessarily a believer, like you said, that's tuning into your podcast, but my mom was not a Christian initially in the way that she was as we grew up. So we grew with her in her faith. And so the first part of God that we got to know was the like, "I don't want to," kind of guy. And then it became more like "I surrender." But this situation sucks and these children are horrible. And then it became like, "Oh, I love my children." Like she was convincing herself. And
Yeah.
then we got to know the joy that we know now, which is like, "Oh, God is faithful. He is kind. And there is goodness in these little tiny people
That are now big people.
that are now big people that like love on her and know how to love God." But I think what was helpful about that in her journey was like getting to see like God be real. Like
Yeah.
she did not have a problem like yelling about something, complaining about something, praying about something, telling us to pray about something. Like we walked through what that journey was with God to God for her, with her, and then just I saw her transform over my life. And what didn't change was the desire to see good for other people and the desire to want to serve people, even if that meant serving looked different in different seasons for her, with her family, with her husband, with church. And then even as a businesswoman, she owned her own business too. Like later, as we got older, she became a Mary Kay consultant. That's why my eyes look great. Or, you know what I'm saying?
You look
Thank you, Mary Kay.
amazing. And so
Guys,
does your mom. I did have the privilege of seeing her on
yeah.
FaceTime,
Well,
and she is
I'm telling you,
beautiful.
it's the time wise.
Beautiful.
It's time wise. It's time wise in Jesus, but it's time wise. It's that whole time wise. And she worked with one of the ladies in our when we lived in Louisiana. I will never forget. There was a group of women. They on our block. Everybody had children, all of them, and they would get together as moms. And one of the ladies decided she wanted to own a bakery, and all the moms pulled together to help work at her store so she could open it. So my mom worked in a bakery for at least, I believe it was like almost 2 years. She helped, and they would take turns. So like I saw her she didn't have her own entrepreneurship journey in that way, but she did with Mary Kay. I saw her support other people's businesses. And I think she has told me since I've been older as an adult that a lot of the reason she said yes was because she realized her greatest ministry and the greatest way she could serve God was to love her children
Mm.
and her family well and the people around her. And so I think she really tried to do that and teach us to do that. So yeah, she's amazing, amazing woman.
Such an amazing woman. And I know you have an amazing dad as well.
I do. I love that joke. He's
Yes. He's a joker.
he is.
Yes.
Truly. All the time. Anytime he can get a dad joke off, God bless America.
Oh my gosh. We
So
love him.
we love
Both.
Sherita.
It was such a joy to be able to see even just how you interact with your parents, like on a random FaceTime. For those that don't know, which is probably literally everyone, but Sharita and I met on this co-working app,
Mhm.
co-working space online, and just connected immediately through, of course, we were like set up. It was like a blind meeting
There's
originally,
someone else.
actually, through someone else. Yes, through one of my sweet friends and team members. And yeah, just immediately connected. And we were planning a trip to Waco for a women's retreat type of thing, impromptu. And I was like, Sharita, you got to come. And she's, if God calls me and he opens the door, I will be there. And I was
Yeah.
like, okay, let's pray. Like, we're going to be praying that God's going to open the doors. He's
Right.
going to make a way. And long story short, Sharita came. We spent almost a week together in Waco, Texas. Just had a really incredible time in fellowship, in prayer, hearing about where each other are at in life and business, and planning for future ways to serve. And in that is where she would FaceTime her parents, or her parents would FaceTime her, but one or the other. And it just became like a staple. I feel like in my memories of that trip, I will always remember you FaceTiming your parents and them just like being a part of it, even just
Right.
through those little conversations. It was so fun.
Anybody that comes into our story, it belongs to them. That's just how they are. That's how we grew up. My dad's parents were like that. It was like, oh, if you're George's friend, then you're a part of the family. So I think my dad carried that over. My mom was not as excited about she was like, get out of my house. I got 4 people. I don't need anybody else.
Yeah.
But I think as we got older, it became a thing for her too. Just, yeah, you belong. So
Yeah.
they were just as excited to see y'all as I was excited for them to meet you. So
Yes, I know. I like so badly want to meet them in person. So
you
we
will.
got to make that happen.
Yes.
Okay. So let's go back to after you graduated college. What career route did you first take?
Initially, I went to school to be a cinematographer. And at the time, that was like a really big deal for my family because I was not going into teaching or education or nursing or something. Like I said, that was more service oriented or even more consistent financially. And I did everything I could. I traveled like everywhere to be on sets with I met people at Starbucks that I worked at and had a chance to work with Screen Gems, Entertainment, and One Tree Hill. And just, I went anywhere I could get in. And the day that I actually met the actor Wendell Pierce, who is an amazing actor. He's performed in so many things now, but at the time I knew him from the movie Waiting to Exhale. And he just gave me information for one of the top producers in that year that had been working with Tyler Perry and Lionsgate Films, Reuben Cannon, and he said, "Call him. Here's his number." I called. He told me what to do to be able to get in to work with them. And the very same day, I felt like God was like, "Okay, you need to go teach." And I was like, "The devil is a liar. That is not. I did not do all this work to get over." I talked to Reuben Cannon, pretty much was close to Jesus on earth in my mind. And so I was like, "No, I'm not gonna. I don't even like kids like that. Like, I'm not going to teach." And the next day, I got a phone call from LaGrange College. Never even applied to their program. And they were like, "Oh, we want you to be we have one seat left in our cohort." And I was like, "Give it away to somebody else. I don't know why you called me. How did you get my phone number?" And long story short, I ended up out of school in Griffin teaching instead of on a film with Reuben Cannon, Tyler Perry, any of these other people, which is where I wanted to be. I just wanted to tell stories. I wanted to tell stories. I had gone to school for film, television, production. I had got an acting degree. I initially thought I was going to write scripts for telenovelas because I love Telemundo and Univision and I loved Spanish. And so I just was like, I'm going to be the first Black woman to write in Spanish that doesn't speak Spanish as a first language. Didn't happen because I got too tired of being in classes, but also because I just couldn't get and break into the film industry. I ended up teaching. And
Because God redirected you.
when I say pivot, you hear me? That was his word before 2020. And it was real annoying. Yeah. But it's not a fun thing when you have a plan. And then God's like, "Go here." And a lot of people, I have a lot of friends who know me that are not believers, and they deal with me saying, I had a friend at the time, I was also simultaneously trying to open up a restaurant because I love cooking and
What?
love background. And so I had this idea to start this restaurant that would be geared towards education, and I could open it with a mindset of hiring students from the culinary arts programs that were in Atlanta, the hospitality programs in Atlanta, and the architectural design program, SCAD, in Atlanta, to redo this house that now actually is a restaurant. It was called the Wrecking Ball at first or something like that. And wanted to redo it over. And my friend who was not Christian at the time, and he's still not Christian, was like, "Hey, yo, God didn't tell you to do this. You're just being too nice to want to help people." He's like, "Don't help people. It's not going to get you anywhere." And part of me was like, "You're right. Why am I doing this?" And then the other part of me was like, "But I really feel pulled in my heart. This is God. This is not a me thing because it makes no sense to leave what I've been working towards to go towards this." And I got there, served at one of the lower income schools in Griffin, Georgia. And the first day of school ended up meeting a student that I felt like God was like, "That's going to be your son." And again, I was like, "Jesus, stop talking." And he was right. Because when he talked, you know what I'm saying? And I'm that type of person in relationship with God where I actually listen. It's a lot of people, God talk, and they be like, "Keep going." And God talked to me, I listened, and I was like, "Please go sit down and go talk to somebody else. Don't pick me in this season." And he did. He was like, "Okay." He kept talking. He picked me, and
He was not quiet.
he was quiet. People say, "I can't hear God," is because you just choosing not to listen. So I ended up adopting this kid. He was Indian. I was Black. He was 13 years younger than me. I was a little afraid. And at the same time, it just felt like really perfect. So yeah, that's how I began my education journey. It was a whole
So,
thing.
it was not necessarily by choice, but by calling.
There you go. And you do need that as an
Yeah.
educator, for teaching. Teaching is one of the most difficult, and people talk about it, but you don't really understand if you haven't taught, especially in lower income areas. And you go to school, you get all these degrees, trying to get more money than you owe more money to pay off the degrees that supposedly gave you a higher income check that you're now just taxed more on. So a very vicious cycle. But the children, the people who really enjoy teaching are the people who realize like these kids are worth it. Even if you can't always see how it's worth it in the moment, you see their potential. And I can't tell you how many kids I have that have come back. And this is years now. I'm beautifully aged younger, and they're just getting older. And so they are like, "Oh, Miss Harkness." They find me on Facebook or they find me on Instagram. "Oh, you were so mean in class, I thought, until I realized you meant this." Or
It takes some time for those like truth bombs that I
Oh
think
my
a lot
God.
of teachers like they plant in
Yeah.
the
And
minds of these children. Yeah,
yeah.
and me too. I have so many experiences like that that it doesn't actually take root until they're older when they're more mature and you
Right.
can understand why you said that. What does
Right.
that actually mean?
Right.
So what age or what grades did you teach?
I had grades 7 through 12
Huh.
and one summer at college, which is a very interesting age. And most people, you just get people, it depends on your personality. I love seventh grade because it's like the world turns, but the little people version. And it's a soap opera every day. Somebody got a problem. They don't like somebody. Periods are starting. People starting to sweat. It's just random. You don't know what's going to happen every day. But I also love it because you can be sarcastic. When I substituted, when I tried to figure out, okay, is this really what I'm supposed to be doing? And I thought I could be a kindergarten teacher, and I thought wrong because they have germs and they touch you and they can't write their name yet. And I just was having moments with these little people. You can't say shut up. And I messed that up at least 4 times. And I was like, this is not for me. I need somebody that is older that don't have all their brain cells. And that is seventh grade. That's seventh grade. So
That is seventh grade.
I will pray for anybody with 12-year-olds and up because they lose brain cells every single day. And you have to remind yourself not to hurt people and that they just don't know. But they're so cool too because they're losing brain cells, they have space for new ones to grow. And then you
Amazing. Yes.
learn and teach and grow along with them. So I taught English and I taught theater and I loved both of them.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is so fun. I can picture you as a teacher. Like I would probably be the student in your classroom who like caused a lot of problems, but it's actually
Absolutely.
because yes, but it's actually because like you were my favorite teacher. Yeah. And I
Yeah.
assume that's
A lot of those.
probably, yeah,
Yeah.
I bet you did.
They're still around today. Right.
Oh,
Just cool.
yes. I love when those relationships like end up becoming something that is so much more than you could have ever imagined, right?
Yeah.
That's just so God when he brings, especially I was never a teacher, so I don't have that type of relationship, but there are people that are younger than me that I've met throughout the years that we're still in connection, even if it's just once or twice a year. And I'll just always have a sweet bond with them because of the moments we were able to share.
Yeah.
So I know now you are not a teacher,
No.
and there's been quite a journey from that time in your life to where you are today.
Yes.
You've traveled the world, you've lived in out of the country across the seas. And so I would love for you to tell us a little bit about how you were called out of teaching, because I'm going to assume it was a calling as well, and what you were called into next.
I'm caught out of teaching. I wouldn't say caught, I would say forced
Oh,
circumstantially. So I went to Dubai at the end of my, I don't know, maybe 5 years in because of the recession. Ended up going there to teach ESL, English as a second language, to Emirati girls who love and adore. And I actually found that living in Dubai and working in the UAE, because I worked for the government of Abu Dhabi and taught at a school in the Emirate, Shimon, Emirates are states. And I did that for 2.5 years and then ended up doing some other work 2 years after that. But I loved working with my girls and I loved living there as a Christian, which would sound crazy because it really made me understand walking alongside my girls who were Muslim, having friends who were Muslim, meeting people. Dubai has 140 different nationalities within a 15-mile radius of each other. There is no way that you will never meet someone not meet someone from a different country. And people are curious and they are interested in who you are because of who you are, not because of your ethnicity, not because of nationality. And they genuinely just want to get to know, but also because Dubai is a transient city. So halfway through my first year there, I got pulled out of teaching because the sheikh said, the sheikh is the owner of the UAE, and the sheikh's office found that I had a unique set of skills in storytelling, production, education, and in science and technology because I had gone back to school to get a tech degree. And they pulled me out and they're like, okay. They came to the school and told me, okay, this your last day. Halas, you will not come back after this. You will come to the office for the administration. You will work with the sheikh there. He have a new program for you to create. And I was like, no, I'm good. Thank you. I appreciate it. But I love my girls. I want to be here. So they left. Next day, it's a whole entourage that comes and it's a totally different person. He is full-fledged in his Dubai wear and his garb, and he comes and he says, "You're a Miss Plus?" I said, "Yes." He goes, "You don't have choice. You will come." هذا يعني يعني the sheikh have already decided for you. You will come. This not asking. And I was like, well, y'all could say that yesterday. I, I thought I had a choice. I don't know why I thought this was still America in that way. Where I didn't have a choice. The sheikh said you go. So I was pulled out of teaching and ended up working in the Sheikh's office to write a curriculum initially for the UAE to allow girls to be in creative media production. And I had to align that with a curriculum that was based in Britain with a program called BTEC with the British Technical Education Council. And then they said, now you got to, I finished that, which was not easy, but done because I had a background in curriculum writing. And then they said, okay, now you have to build a studio for the girls to actually use the curriculum. And I was like, do I look like an architect? My dad is in construction, but not me. And they don't care about that. So it just forced me to meet a lot of people I never would have met. I had to work with, I had the privilege and the honor of meeting and working with some of the first females in the UAE to be in media and production. Nora Al-Kabi, Nila Al-Khaja, so many different people like.
Hey there, friends. Are you ready to rise fully into your calling as a leader? I want to introduce you to Heart Soul Strength, a ministry dedicated to equipping leaders like you to serve with purpose, resilience, and joy, fully aligned with God's will for your life and the people you have specifically been called to lead. Whether you are leading a company from your home while you're raising small kids, or you're the leader of a Fortune 500 company, I want to personally invite you to our first immersive event, the Rise Leadership Conference, happening November 12th through 14th, 2025 in Waco, Texas, at the stunning Deerfield Estates, just 10 minutes from downtown Waco. This will be a weekend of worship, actionable workshops, connections, networking, and fellowship with women who share the same anointing on their lives, but maybe at different levels. It's designed to recharge your heart, soul, and strength, and to empower you to lead with clarity and confidence. Tickets are now available at the lowest donation rate they will ever be, but only through the end of this year. So whether you're able to join us in person or simply just want to support the mission of Heart Soul Strength, where we are called to equip leaders, your donation makes a difference. And as a thank you, now through the end of the year, if you donate any amount, we will send you a little gift, a bookmark, a magnet, or a sticker to show you our gratitude. Visit heartsoulstrength.org to learn more, to donate, or to grab your ticket to Rise. Let's rise into leadership the way that God intended, together. You are created worthy, and through Him, you have the heart, soul, and strength to make a kingdom impact in whatever role you're serving in. God's got you, and you got this.
It was amazing. I worked with the first show that they ever exported from 2454 Media, which is PETA Planet. These two guys that were local Emiratis that would go around and the world and meet people and talk about like where they live and how they do all these things. So I got a chance to be a part of something that I never could have imagined for myself, which then also gave me an opportunity to move into business and into business in a global space that I never would have ever experienced living here. Simultaneously, I got a chance to work with some actors from West End London, and I was acting on stages there in Dubai and putting on shows like Love, Lost, and What I Wore, which is the off-Broadway production there, written by Nora Ephron and Delia Ephron, who wrote like all the movies that we love. Sorry, was I right? Movies that we love.
Love it.
And so it just was great. And then I got a chance to work with some churches there and help to plant ministries. And just, it was like the world just felt like so big. And then all of a sudden I ended up back in America because my mom had several strokes. And so she needed someone to help. And when I came back, I couldn't teach anymore. I also don't think I really wanted to teach. I was going to do it because it was just easy and I wasn't sure what to do next. But I ended up contracting with local organizations, and specifically one of them happened to be a church. It was a church that was really integrated in the business world in Atlanta. It's called Buckhead Church. It's a part of North Point Ministries with Andy Stanley. And I had connections to that church in Dubai through some other friends who happened to give my information 3 years before I ever came home to a woman that worked at Buckhead, unbeknownst to me, didn't have a clue. And I went on my birthday when my mom was in the hospital, couldn't walk, couldn't talk, couldn't do anything. I went to the church and they said, "Hey, come down for prayer." And at that time, I think I was really just upset with God for having to leave Dubai and these great experiences. All my friends that I had made there, I felt like an outsider in my own country. When I got back, just having had such a global experience. And when I went down to pray, I saw two ladies, and I was like, "Now, Jesus, I don't want the one on the right because she looked like she can't pray, and I need some breakthrough today." No offense to her, didn't even know her, but I just wanted somebody that could get me through whatever the anger and the hurt and the darkness. And this lady that I wanted, she ended up praying with me. And I found out as I was telling her my name and where I came from, she said, "You came from where? Dubai?" And I said, "Yeah." And she goes, "Oh my God, I got a letter about you 3 years ago. And it said that if you ever came here, that I should like work with you, help you get a job." And I was like, "Who's church?" And it was one of the guys that I had helped to plant a church with and while I was overseas. And she said, "I want to help you. I'm going to get you connected to all the people I can." And from there, I feel like God just was really kind to let me connect with so many different people to learn more about business. And I started my business Trading Force. So
Mhm.
that was how we
Wow.
got
That's how
in.
you, yeah. So, real quick, I want to take a couple steps back into your time in Dubai. And I just see God's hand all over, obviously, all over that time, but specifically in honoring the desire of your heart with the production side of things. Like the fact he literally, like, he put you in teaching and then he literally plucked you out of teaching. Like, into an industry so closely aligned with what you were desiring to begin with. And I just don't want that part of your testimony to be lost on me. I'm like, I need to verbally process this and our listeners, of course. But I just think that's such an incredible testimony of how God still saw you, right? Like he created you uniquely to have the desires that you have.
Mhm.
And although he called you in a different direction, he also weaved your journey together in this way to still give you these experiences that, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but fulfilled those desires. And probably, I know that what you're doing now, like there's still threads of all of these different pieces. That's one of the very first things that we talked about is how much incredibly rich experiences and skills you have in your life that God has just so perfectly ordained. And I know that there have been times where that hasn't necessarily been honored or seen by the humans around, but I just want to really focus and highlight like the fact that God did see that. He has continued to put these very clear signs in your journey that have pointed you back to him and confirming his call on your life. So,
Yep.
snaps for Joyce, but also snaps for Sharita, because that in itself, like just the portions of your story that you just shared, takes a lot of obedience. Like it's easy for one to say, I've been called this direction or this direction, but it's another thing to actually take action on those promptings, right? On those messages where God is, I want you to be in a classroom. I want you to adopt this person. I like, these are huge things. I'm going to pluck you out of where you love to be in Dubai and what you love doing and put you in a completely different industry doing something in completely different. And then I'm going to have you plant churches and ministries. And then I'm going to have you do this and this. And then you're going to get on stage. And then you're going to do, but it was like, so I don't know, like that's hearing all those pieces of what you've journeyed through is what makes me so incredibly honored to be sitting across the screen from you and hearing how God saw you and has continued to protect you and guide you into these making this huge, huge amount of impact.
Mhm.
Like the amount of people that you've impacted and lives that you've changed through the work that you've done by being obedient are countless. And it's continual impact, right? It's legacy impact
Yeah.
where every day somebody is impacted by the work that you've done and then now the work that you continue to do. So snaps for you, my sweet friend. I
I'm grateful that
think
you
so.
together. I don't think I ever paid attention to that, if I'm honest. You live your story. I think that's for
Mhm,
anybody listening to. You're just so focused on living your story. And I'm very much an achiever. I'm the oldest.
mhm.
So it's get this time, mark this off. And so I don't think I ever even thought about it like that, that God let me go back. Not just let me go back. I was fully immersed in
Mhm.
production, but could do that job because I had this background. That's something that I asked him for the longest time.
So
Let
many.
me go back. And even like I said, here it doesn't matter to anyone, but it was a big deal to like be acting on stage, and that was something that I really loved doing and telling stories and studied so hard to do. And it felt, what did I do that for? I'm teaching. I had a kid tell me once because kids are so wonderful, and he said, Miss Harkness, if you're so great and you're so good at film and television, then why are you here teaching us? Because he was in my little film class. And I could have said lots of little things to this child. I didn't. Instead, I just said, because if all the great people go on to be great, then who teaches you? You have to learn from good people. And just because I've chosen, I said, I chose to be here. That doesn't mean that I'm not great. It just means that I've chosen to lay something down that I love to honor something else that will give you an opportunity to do what you love.
Mm.
So you ought to thank me, which a little trifling tale. Now sit down. So we just went on. But I want to thank you for that reminder that just because you don't always see it show up the way that you want it to show up in your story doesn't mean that God is forgotten, right? It doesn't mean that you're forgotten. It also doesn't mean that you won't get to do, if you're not a follower of Christ, it doesn't mean that you won't get a chance to do the things that you want. There's
Mm.
just timing, right? For everything,
Yeah.
there's a time, and for everything, there's a season. And I just, yeah, almost forgot about that. So thank you for the
Yeah.
reminder. That's amazing.
And I think it also points to the fact that nothing is wasted,
Right.
right? Like,
Right.
you didn't go to school to learn these things for them to not ever play a part in your life. I think I hear that all the time from people. I went to school
Yeah.
for this, but I'm not doing anything in that industry. I'm like, so do you think that your time in school didn't serve a purpose? Because I just don't believe that.
Yeah. Or the way that, again, the way you thought it was going to show up. It's not
Yeah,
showing up that way. It doesn't mean that it's
exactly.
not valuable or not there. So, no, I just, thanks for the reminder because it's easy to forget when you're like in the story, right?
Yes. Oh,
Just
for
like,
sure. That's
I
why
was,
it's so important. I believe that our life stories are the most powerful tool of connection that we have.
yeah.
And this is why, like, this conversation right now is evidence of why the Lord has called me to start this type of podcast, is
Yeah.
because we need to have spaces where we can just tell our stories. Because
Yeah.
there's so much healing that happens and so much awakening that happens when we tell them, when
Mhm.
we share about what we've walked through. And
Mm.
then we have that time set apart to process this so that we can see the ways that these things work together, right? I call them like sometimes we walk through the puzzle piece seasons where all of a sudden it's like, oh, now I see why God led me there.
Right. Right.
Oh, now I see. And so you see some of those puzzle pieces starting to connect. But if we're just so lost in the busyness of life, then we don't actually make time to connect those puzzle pieces, which is
Right.
where connection like this and telling stories just about who you are and what you've walked through, this is what makes those puzzle pieces connect.
Well,
Uh,
right. Like
it is.
that's why you love Disney. That's why you love the stories you love because you have
That's so right.
perspective outside to see the dots connect. And
Yep.
so we look to stories a lot of times, I think, to escape our own story and find like purpose in our own story. But
Yep.
really, all the purpose, all the magic, it's already in your story.
Mhm.
You just need to step outside of your own story to be able to have the perspective to like to see it, that it's
Yeah.
there. That same magic is woven into your story as well.
Mm.
So
That
yeah.
is so good. That's like a mic drop moment right there. That same magic is woven into your story as well. It hasn't missed you. Your
Mhm.
somebody else's life is not better than your life. That you just have to seek that, right? You have to take the time to process it, to create, right? To connect, to do sometimes have to do the therapy work or the inner work or make that really uncomfortable step of obedience that you're being prompted to take that is probably completely different than the plan that you made.
Yeah.
And then but that is where the magic happens. That is the magic of your story is you being able to say, I put my plan aside and I did something that was uncomfortable for the sake of others or for the sake of just honoring God. Like we don't have
Of
to have all
course.
of the pieces or for yourself.
I think people forget that too. I'm like, I've had to learn that coming from a house of service minded, service oriented family. It can be so easy, especially for me. I'm the oldest, I'm the only girl, like to want to carry, forget that the magic that and I say magic, and for some people who are Christian, they'll be like, oh, that's such a crazy. But I'm like, magic belongs to God. Like,
Mhm.
magic is
Miracles are magic.
a miracle does not need I don't need to have something so supernatural all the time. Sometimes the miracle is me. Sometimes the miracle is that I got out of bed this morning.
Yeah.
Like, you don't know what could have happened to me. Sometimes the miracle is I can appreciate like just the fact that I can see color. I can see a sunrise. I was looking to the left or right because there's a window that's right
Yeah.
outside. My miracle is even in my house. Like I used to dream that I would have a room that I could write in, like just for writing because all the writers that I admire, Maya Angelou, Toni Morrison, these women had writing rooms, and Virginia Woolf, they had their own space for writing. And I just thought, oh God, one day, and I have it. And yet there's been times I've sat in this very room and thought, oh, there's nothing magical about what I'm doing today. And that's not true. So
Yeah.
I think sometimes it's just recognizing magic is in little things. Fairy dust comes out, pixie dust from
Mhm.
Tinkerbell is quite small, so it has
Mhm.
to fall on little things, right? Magic is granular. It's not always so grand, but it does create like very big things. You know what I mean?
Yes, 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 yes. Oh my gosh. Oh my god. I don't know. I'm like, take it all in, take it all in. I need to receive all of the
Filtering me down from the sound. It's a reminder for me. I'm not just telling you to say it, but yeah.
Oh,
Just
yeah. I feel like everything I say on here, like when I'm in deep conversation with people, I'm like, oh God, this is where when I pray those words, take away my words and fill me with yours. It is. I love that you pointed out. Sometimes it's for you. Oh yeah, that's right. Talk
you
about preaching to choir.
you matter right where you are. You matter to you're important. And that's easy to forget. It's easy to
Yeah.
forget. You're so focused on what the world says achievement is, success, what it means to be a woman, what it means to be a man, what it means to you just forget. Sometimes it's just by being. I just need to be present and be mindful. There's a verse for people who are followers of Christ that is in this book of John, and was a disciple of Jesus. And John is a little bougie. He says that he's the disciple whom Jesus loved. He just, I think, recognized that God loved him, that Jesus loved him, where the other ones were still focused on like accomplishing, right? So he's like the perfect person, but he has this one little scripture that he writes in this letter of John where he says, abide. He's talking about Jesus. There's, if you abide in me, and Jesus says, I abide in the Father, right? So it's all this thing about abide. And I used to hate that word. When I say hate, oh, it used to bother me. But then I started looking up why abide. And the picture that Jesus is painting for the disciples in that moment is this picture of a grapevine and a vineyard. And I don't know if anybody like wine out there. I do. And think it's beautiful. It's wonderful. All the things. And what was most beautiful to me that was going to a vineyard to see the grapes growing on the vine. Right. It's just that is magical to me. Tamara Mallory and her husband have their own little vineyard, and I love that vineyard. But there's one out in California that I love even more. It's called Rideau Vineyard, and it's in Sylvain, near Sylvain, California, in the Santa Ynez Valley. And in that valley, they grow these French grapes. They grow French vineyards. And the way that the grapes are grafted on the vine, that word abide just means grafted in. There's no way that you can unlock from that. And it's not grafted in like you got to hold on, but it's grafted in because that vine is holding up every other branch that's coming off of it that's bearing fruit, right? if any of those vines are not abiding or grafted in, it can't bear fruit because it doesn't have any way to support itself. It doesn't have any life nutrients. And so it's beautiful to me to think about that word abide in the visual representation of, let me just graft myself into God. And what that looks like isn't me actively having to do something all the time. It's actually just getting so cozy with Jesus, so nook cranny cozy in there with him, that I feel safe enough to rest. And as I can rest, the fruit comes. And not rest doesn't just mean, okay, I'm gonna sit here, I'm gonna sleep,
Yeah.
but rest my mind, rest my heart, rest my ambition, like in a sense of like, I'm not working from hustle, I'm not working from hurry. I'm not looking for this approval. I'm just so cozied up and connected to God in a way that I trust that whatever He asks me to do, that yes is going to bear fruit. And I don't have to do anything crazy to get it. I just got to be present. I just got to show up to my story and take the next step.
Yeah.
Whatever. Sorry, that was like the long way to get there. But
No, I'm like taking seriously so many notes
oh, you're so cute.
in my Barbie journal.
Come on, Barbie. Do it. Do it.
I'm like, yes, this is so good. Oh my
Oh,
gosh.
got it.
So before we wrap today, I want you to talk to us a little bit about trading fours. On Created Worthy, we don't so much focus on what we do, but rather on who we are. And you have done such a great job of actually, you basically just said that in focusing on not focusing on what you do, but rather who you are and and abiding in Him, right? And finding that rest in Him and letting that be the thing that bears the fruit.
Yeah.
Like that's really what the heartbeat of Created Worthy is about, is highlighting like who you are and how that has led you to what you do. And so at this stage in your journey, you have a company, an incredible company called Trading Fours. I know you also have a lot of other endeavors that the Lord has called you to and projects and all kinds of things, which as a serial entrepreneur myself, feel I'm very multi-passionate. I feel so deeply connected in you with that or to you with that. That came out weird. Anyways,
Put you in.
so tell us about Trading Fours and what's coming up in your life and business now.
Singing fours is actually a jazz term, and it's where you generally will have four instruments trade off between each other. And I did some research a long time ago when I was trying to figure out the name because it just kept coming. I was like, why? This is a weird name. How do you explain this to people? But there's a magic chemical, is what was in this research thing, that's released for the players when they are trading fours that allows them to trade off in the middle of the song just naturally. And that chemical is only released when they are playing together. Like it's also released for the audience listening. And so that's where the name came from, was Trading Fours, because I grew up in New Orleans. I play clarinet, I play saxophone, love jazz music, love music in general. But also it just came from this idea that there were four areas that I felt like God has just allowed me to fall in love with in my life that played a role in how I do what I do. And that was understanding story, that was experience design, technology, and just this language of like strategy, and strategy being able to be applied to anything from events to moments to programming to organizations. So just recently, I would say in 2020, after trying to have a job shift, Holy Spirit just invited me to co-create a space that I could use all of my gifting. And I was like, what does that look like? And it has taken a long time, but I feel like I'm fairly excited about it. And so Trading Fours is organizational development and strategic design consulting firm. And all that means is that I use elements of design thinking, constructivist theory, which is the ability to help people come to meaning for themselves, and production value storytelling, like where people talk about brand storytelling, but understanding your story, as well as education and training to create space for executives, for leaders, entrepreneurs, owners, managers to be able to come around hard problems that they normally would hand off to a consultant and say, okay, you go fix this, but actually help them work through it themselves and give them the tools that they need to lead their people well. and to actually not only lead their people well, but empower their people to be leaders and empower their people to understand what their companies do, how they do it, and empower their people to love the clients that they serve in ways that are authentic to them and authentic to the company's mission, vision, and values. So I basically help them unearth the magic in their people that they already have so that they can then create magic for the people they want to serve. That's like a
Wow.
very heady way of saying that, right?
No, that's incredible. Can you just real quickly sum up what those 4 areas are? You said there's 4 areas that you realized
Oh, storytelling.
you.
So that was the one. The second one was experience design. Um, the third one was strategy. And the fourth one was technology.
Hmm. I just wanted those personally. And for anyone else who's taking notes, like I'm gonna put these in the comments for sure, or in the
Yeah.
show notes for sure. Cause like even just processing those 4 areas, those would be really good areas actually to use as an intention within creative processing. So creative
Mm,
processing is simply utilizing your own God-given creativity to process any certain intention to ex- actually tap into the peace, joy, goodness, patience, all of the fruits of the spirit, clarity, whatever that goodness is that you're seeking is already within you, but we have to create space for it. And I believe that through our creativity, we can actually embody those things.
that's
But
really when I connected, right?
yeah,
Because my way of creative processing is play. And so
yeah,
that's one thing that helps me stand out when I work with my clients is that we actually use the ideation
mm,
part of design thinking. And so I create play activities and games and spaces for them to play. And that's where we process really hard questions, really hard problems that they otherwise wouldn't be able to like go after on their own. Like I said, they will hire somebody else, they will outsource it, or sometimes they just get thrown under the bus. But when you make space, play opens up like imagination and possibility, and it takes away fear and risk, and it gives you just space to run and figure things out. And generally, we walk away from the table with not only strategy and strategic planning, but also the ability to just say, hey, actually, I'm good at these things. It's really just recognizing like there are things that innately I have that I do well, that I have access to, that if I just made space, I could see it. It's that stepping back and having perspective, right?
yeah. And not putting creativity into a box, right? Most people think that creativity is just painting or writing or
Right.
whatever, but
Right.
really it can be structuring things. It can be
Yeah.
cleaning. It could be going on a walk and hearing the sound of the waves on the beach. Like how your creative mind is engaged is unique to you. So
The
anyone who
word
tells
create.
me they're not creative, I'm like, that shut your
Yeah.
mouth because
Well,
it's
just
not
about
true.
create. It's not about
Yeah.
creativity. It's about creating. If you
Mhm.
create, if you're a follower of Christ, you were made in the image of God. That's the first thing God did was create. He created it in several ways. He created by speaking. He created by forming with his hands. He created from something else. He created structure. He created time. So like you can create, like you said, in millions of different ways. That does not mean that what the way you create is better or more creative than someone else. It's just actually doing the thing, creating something.
Mhm. And he also created the need for rest, right?
Totally.
And
Yeah.
that's like, even that is a creative, that's so that
It's
we
a
can
creative
tap
process.
in. Yeah, that's a
Yeah.
creative process. And sometimes,
Yeah.
like, for people like me who are just go, 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 like, I have to set my intention to rest. Like, that's
Hmm.
the creative method in which I have to engage in
Hmm.
for whatever it is, like for peace or to what is it? De-stimulate? No, wrong word. Nervous system to
Deregulate.
regulate my
Yeah.
nervous system. Like that is, it's so important. And yeah, so much of what you do is just so in line with everything that I've been teaching about, that I've been talking about for so many years now. And that was a huge part of, you're right, what we connected on is like this need for play and just engaging with your creativity. And you do it in such a beautiful way with organizations and companies who need to engage with those types
Yeah.
of processes to unlock, to
Right.
figure out problem solving, to serve their teams well, to serve themselves well, right? To
Yeah. Yeah.
really uncover the heart of their organization. Like those are things that are so often missed, but it's so needed, which is why the work that you're doing is so important and necessary. And I just am so grateful that God has brought you to this place now where trading fours is what he's growing within you, right? Like he's bringing people to you and you just get to pour all of this experience from a ton of different industries and teaching and speaking. And there's so many things that we didn't even have time to talk about today, but Sharita is coming back. I'm just speaking it into existence.
We could do that. You have me down.
Yes. Yes. And I'm just so grateful. So to close out, I would just love for you to tell us what's coming up next in your life and how listeners can best find and connect with you.
We're getting a makeover on LinkedIn and on Instagram, but I think the best way to stay in touch with me is through Instagram. I am currently not a very avid poster, but I post when things are important to me. So you can stay in touch that way. If you're on LinkedIn, if you're a leader, if you are owner of a business and you are looking for support for business strategy, brand story support, any of those things, you can head over to LinkedIn and connect with me there. And yeah, I'll have a whole new look at the end of November, going into the new year. I'm really excited about working with um, leaders and organizations to just really create people-centric companies that serve people, not just their customers, but the people that serve their customers as well, and helping those companies to grow and scale in a way that's purposeful and meaningful. Yes, that's what.
Yes. And by the
Next.
time this episode comes out, you will have a lot of those links ready. So we will have them all in the show notes. Make sure to
Yes.
go to the show notes and connect with Sharita. Follow her on Instagram. Of course, send her a message. She is truly such a light in my life already. And I know she is to anyone who has come into contact with her. So go check out all of the things, all of the most recent endeavors that she has. We will make sure to put in the show notes so that you guys can stay connected with her. Sharita, your journey of overcoming challenges and embracing the beauty of diversity is truly inspiring. Your passion for serving others and bringing joy into both life and work reflects the love of God in such a powerful way. I am so grateful to have been here today and so honored that you shared your story with me and with our listeners. I just want to encourage you to keep shining your light and boldly stepping into the purpose that God has placed on your heart. You are making a difference and you are changing countless lives by simply being unapologetically you. You, my friend, are created worthy.
Hey, friend, thanks for listening to my story on the Created Worthy podcast. I hope that you remember that you have magic in your story and all that you need, you already have. And I promise you that God can do immeasurably more than you could ever imagine. All you got to do is take the next step. I've got you, and you got this.
Thanks for listening and tuning in to the Created Worthy podcast. I hope that today's show resonated with you. And if it did, can you do me a huge favor and go leave a 5-star review? This helps more listeners find the show and it expands the reach of the stories and concepts that are shared here. All the links and guest information are in the show notes. And if you're on social media, come hang out with me. You can find the Created Worthy podcast on both Instagram and Facebook. Or come follow along with my personal IG page where I just share more about the real, sometimes messy life of your fellow worthy warrior. Can't wait to talk to you soon, friend. And don't forget, we are all created worthy.